When I was in sixth grade, my small town school track team did very well and was allowed to compete in the state finals. My event was the 200-meter dash, and while I did okay against the other small towns we normally faced, I had no chance at state. This was pretty much the case for most of us, so we mostly goofed off and explored the massive arena and whatever. I wasn't allowed soda at home, but somebody bought me a huge Coke, and I thought it was pretty great. Came time for me to run my race. Well, actually my heat in the preliminaries, as this thing was so big time that they actually had more runners than would fit on the track at once. First time I'd ever seen that. Coach tells me to do my best and have fun. Nobody expects much. It's just an honor to be there. I line up on this beautiful, wide cinder track with maybe 15 lanes, I was used to 8, and an unbelievable crowd watching. Big grandstands full of people, all new to me. I get kind of excited about the whole thing. So we all set our feet in the blocks, crouch down, and tense up, waiting for the shot from the starter pistol. Meanwhile, a hush settles over the crowd. We're on edge, waiting for the bang. When the starter fires, I take this huge leap forward, like I'm going to sprint the whole 200 meters, which is pretty much what people who are good at it do, but not my usual approach. This massive physical effort simultaneously propels the most violent, loudest fart of my life out my preteen stinkhole. Most of the crowd hasn't trained to the peak physical level that I have, so their reaction to the pistol shot is a tiny bit slower. The effect is that after the bang, but before anyone makes a single sound, my fart echoes through the arena with unbelievable clarity and tone. For everyone there, it's just like bang! Fire! I manage a few strides just out of instinct before realization of what's happening starts to set in. I glance over at the crowd, and in that split second, I can just see it on every face. They know. They all know, and they are all looking right at me. This starts me laughing super hard while also running as hard as I ever have. And what's my body's reaction to that unusual combination? Yep, fart a lot more. However, I am now taking strides pretty rapidly. So instead of one big blast, I'm ripping a little one with each step. I can't even think of what letters could represent the sound. If you can imagine a rapid series of very brief, very loud farts, that's pretty much it. This whole situation has only taken like 10 seconds to develop. We aren't even halfway done yet, and I've farted about 15 times. I literally could not continue from laughing so damn hard. I stumble to a hunched over stop right there in the middle of the fanciest arena I've ever been to, giggling like the farting idiot I am. I then realize that nobody is rushing past me, which, come to think of it, should have happened by this time in the race regardless of the fart situation. I turn around, and every one of the other runners is either lying on the ground or crouched over, laughing just as hard as I am. Literally crying laughing. Apparently, my fart-propelled lunge off the line had taken most of them out, and the rest succumbed to my staccato encore presentation. And that's the story of how an entire heat was eliminated from the 200-meter state finals with no one completing the event, which I was told had never happened before in the history of state finals. I escaped amazingly unscathed, as the tiny handful of people from my school were all setting up for their own events and not watching. There were rumors of a second farter, and basically, they let me walk away. I hid in the school bus till we left, and my coach was the only person to ever speak to me about it. He didn't laugh, but he also didn't yell at me.
My friend was sleeping over at my house. My parents and brother were all sleeping upstairs while we were downstairs watching TV, playing video games and shit. At around 1 a.m. he asks if this girl can come over. He really wants to get with this girl, and I don't want to turn him down, so I reluctantly agree, on the condition that she's quiet. The three of us are hanging out and I make some excuse to leave the room so my friend can have some alone time with this girl. I'm upstairs in my room when I start hearing loud moans. This is bad news for me, but great news for my friend. He's losing his virginity to a girl he really likes. I hear stirring in the next room and I know that their bout of loud lovemaking has woken my parents. The last thing I want is for my confused father to walk in on my friend fucking this girl in my basement. What do? I go to Pornhub, click on the first video I see, crank that shit to 100 on my speakers and let it play for the 3 minutes that my buddy ended up lasting. My dad ended up coming into my room, Discovering the source of the noise, I even threw in some fapping motion under the covers, and awkwardly leaving. My buddy ended up having the best fucking time ever, bro, but Jesus, there were some awkward glances exchanged between my parents and I the next morning.
Last night, my wife's boss, Linda, from her brand new job, invited us over for dinner. On the drive over, my wife, Sarah, reiterated many times to me just how important it was to make a good impression. I scoffed and arrogantly informed my silly wife that I always make good impressions. My wife's boss is a single lady in her 50s, so it was just the three of us. We chit-chatted over drinks and salads and seemed to really be hitting it off. She laughed at my well-timed, perfectly appropriate jokes, and my wife seemed pleased. Soon she brought out the main course, a nice big juicy steak for each of us. As I began to cut into my steak, I was discouraged to discover how undercooked this steak was. Now, I've had my fair share of rare steak. I prefer medium, but I can handle rare. This was several minutes on a hot grill short of rare. I probably could have resuscitated the cow had I tried. Instead, I sat there fidgeting with my knife and fork, worrying about how I was going to get away with not eating this steak. Claim veganism? No, I'd already feigned great enthusiasm upon seeing the steak. Just then, our hostess excused herself to the kitchen to take care of some dessert preparations. As I looked across the fancy dining room table at the open window of this third-story apartment, a cartoon light bulb appeared over my head. I knew I had to be decisive, realizing that she could return at any moment. I committed. I grabbed the steak with my hand, gently shook off the juice, and executed a perfect throw right through the center of the open window. Here's the big-time F.U. The window wasn't open. It was the cleanest fricking window you've ever seen in your life. That is, until my mostly raw slab of steak slammed up against it and slowly slid down, leaving a trail of bloody juice in its wake. My wife, whose steak was a nice medium rare and was unaware of my predicament, turned, jaw dropped, and stared at me like I was an alien from another planet. This look then slowly morphed into more of a "there is no place on this planet you can ever hide from me" expression of demonic anger. My wife's boss heard the thud of the steak on window impact and came quickly. She took in the scene. The steak sitting on the windowsill, the blood trail, my empty plate, and then gave me an inquisitive, puzzled look. I just didn't know what to say. It felt like a minute of silence, but was probably 3 or 4 seconds. Finally, the best I could manage was, I'm so sorry, I am such a klutz, I don't know. I was just cutting it, and it slipped. Just ask my wife. I really am a klutz, right, Sarah? No help coming from that direction. I will clean this up. I can't believe this. I am so sorry, etc., etc. Both women continued to stare at me like I had escaped from the loony bin, as I smeared the blood around the window with my cloth napkin, dusted off the steak, and continued to mutter my incoherent explanation. I knew no one was buying the story. I knew what I had to do. I sheepishly returned to my seat and proceeded to eat every bite of that disgusting, cold, chewy, bloody raw steak. I remained pretty quiet the rest of the evening. My wife's only 2 words to me since the incident are, "I'm fine."
When I was young, my father said to me, "Knowledge is power." Francis Bacon. I understood it as, "Knowledge is power." Francis Bacon. For more than a decade, I wondered over the meaning of the second part, and what was the surreal linkage between the two. If I said the quote to someone, "Knowledge is power, Francis Bacon," they nodded knowingly. Or someone might say, "Knowledge is power," and I'd finish the quote, "Francis Bacon." And they wouldn't look at me like I'd said something very odd, but thoughtfully agree. I did ask a teacher, what did "knowledge is power, Francis Bacon" mean, and got a full 10-minute explanation of the "knowledge is power" bit, but nothing on Francis Bacon. When I prompted further explanation by saying, "Francis Bacon?" in a questioning tone, I just got a yes. At 12, I didn't have the confidence to press it further. I just accepted it as something I'd never understand. It wasn't until years later I saw it written down that the penny dropped. In Beauty and the Beast, Gaston ate 4 dozen eggs daily when he was a child. That's 48 eggs a day. As an adult, he adds another dozen, tallying up to 60 eggs a day. This is nothing short of genocide. My theory for why Gaston is beloved by the townsfolk is that sometime prior to the start of the movie, France was overrun with poultry. Helpless at the claws of the chickens, the people of France were preparing to abandon their country when a lone child stepped forward. "I'll eat the eggs," a young Gaston bellowed, "and I will save our homeland." And so it was. Gaston ate and ate until he was roughly the size of a barge. How the cholesterol didn't kill him can only be attributed to his inhuman fortitude. This is where the story turns tragic. What Gaston hadn't accounted for was developing an addiction to the eggs. As he aged, he ate more and more, and with the chicken crisis over, his addiction began costing him financially. There's a scene during Gaston's song where he motions to a wall full of his hunting trophies. But why are they there? Does he own the bar? No, he sold them for egg money. The fact he never brings up his egg addiction or his prior heroism can be attributed to another one of Gaston's defining character traits: his struggle to be emotionally open and his modesty. It's not easy being the man who saved France. I think the saddest scene is when Belle shows Gaston the book and he holds it upside down. See, Gaston seems brutish, but remember, his entire childhood was spent eating eggs. He didn't have time for an education. He sacrificed his upbringing for his countrymen. He can't even hold a book correctly. What Gaston wants to say, what he's struggling to articulate, is, "Belle, I'm dying. A lifelong diet of a quite frankly insane number of eggs has left my body bloated with tumors. Before I shove off this mortal coil, I want children who might experience a world without the oppression I have suffered." Belle cruelly mocks him, which goes to make you wonder who the real beast is. When Gaston sees the beast in the mirror, two thoughts run through his head. First, he sees his countrymen in danger once more, and despite being riddled with egg tumors, wants to lead the masses to one last charge of glory, since fighting for France is all he knows. Second, he realizes Beast's head is about a month's worth of egg money. So he sieges the castle, and in one of Disney's most tragic moments, plummets to his death. Another reason Gaston wants to marry Belle is because, as mentioned above, all he knows how to do is fight for France and its people. Gaston saw Maurice as a genuine danger, and he's not wrong. Consider the hellish contraption Maurice created. One look at that war machine, and Gaston hatched a plan: marry Belle and get close enough to Maurice to talk him down. Mind you, he did love Belle and wanted to be the father of her children, but the danger presented by Maurice forced his plan into action immediately. When that fell through, he had no choice but to throw Maurice in the asylum, something marrying Belle would have fixed, since he would once again be close enough to Maurice to influence him. All in all, the failure was one of articulation.
If I decide to stare, it's usually with a, "Yeah, what the fuck are you gonna do about it?" Look. I'm about 6 feet 7 inches, so even when I'm just trying to be friendly, i.e. not farting on a stanger kid's head, and meeting a family member's or friend's kid for the first time, I've noticed they get very high between their mother's legs, intimidated on sight if I'm not sitting down. So it's not hard for me to silence/intimidate a child, especially when I'm trying to. However, a few times I've been called out. One time I was pretty drunk with a friend at a Target buying Risk, and no, we never finished playing the whole game. This little Mexican 5 to 7-year-old with a mohawk was being an insufferable little shit in the action figure section. I heard him from like 5 aisles over, and it was like nails on a chalkboard. I tell my friend, "I'm gonna fart on this kid's head. Watch and learn." I saunter on over to the aisle in question and see the vile little prick calling his mom an idiot for not buying him a huge fucking G.I. Joe the movie vehicle, which pissed me off even more considering how awful that movie was. Buy some good toys. I already bought that one for you and you broke it by throwing it down the stairs. Shut up. I need IT. It's the only one I don't have now. The mother was younger than me, I'm mid-20s, and gave a defeated look. "I don't have enough money right now." You are an idiot, and continued to just berate and publicly shame this woman. At the time, I was on a strict Chipotle carnitas burrito diet. And while I was watching all this, my stomach gave me an initial warning gurgle, very courteous stomach, telling me I was about an hour away from punishing the toilet. Serendipity. Destiny. I inch a bit closer to my prey, inspecting some wrestling toys and pondering the weird homoeroticness of the whole sport in general. The kid shouts, "Fuck you, I hate you." The mom rolls her eyes and turns her back to the kid to ignore him. And could you believe it, the kid gets on his hands and knees and starts taking the toy out of the box. "It's go time, motherfucker." I position my back towards him and at this point am like 2 feet away from him. His head is down, getting frustrated with those goddamn twisty tie things, and I go for the kill. I bend down to reach for one of the toys on the lower shelf. At this point, my ass is inches away from this kid's head. Now, generally speaking, the best way to go about this is to act casual, drop your belly bomb, then walk away after a few seconds like nothing is out of the ordinary. I usually go one aisle over and listen to the kid's reaction in delight. However, today I couldn't help myself. I have my head tilted back looking at this kid out of the corner of my eye, to ensure accuracy. I'm so close that from a distance it looks like I'm about to sit on him. My friend sees this happening and can no longer contain himself. He's covering his mouth, but his hee-haw hyperventilating donkey chortle is fairly audible over the late 90s pop music playing on the loudspeakers. The kid immediately looks up towards the laughter, but can't help but notice there is an ass now directly in his face. Now, I'm trying not to laugh but also panicking as I just made eye contact with him. He furrows his brow and I look over in the mother's direction, still back towards us. I relish in the moment and the look on this child's confused and naive face. The initial blast was mighty and boisterous. I swear I saw his hair blowing in the wind, so to speak. If I wasn't wearing jeans, I think it could have probably blown over an empty soda can. I would call it a very fun fart, A++ would buy again. However, what immediately followed that out the chamber was truly horrifying. The fart's implication changed without notice and swiftly. It went from a joyous, dry air horn squeal to a nefarious, hissing mephitis. I think the little moppet noticed the hateful metamorphosis before even I did because he wrenched his neck violently trying to get away from the personified evil being fumigated into his soul. Because of his positioning, hovering over the toy, hands and knee, it was all in vain as the only way out was forward, and forward would mean certain death. I had positioned myself well on the higher ground, free to escape or relent at any time, and him, poor and immobilized, biding his time until the cruel attack was over. Obviously, this child needed to reread Sun Tzu. In total, it lasted about 4 seconds, but for that kid, it must have seemed like time was frozen. The long-term severe brain damage which he no doubt suffered, only added to that effect. When I finished with my business, i.e. forcing a little boy to huff my farts, there was a silent, pregnant pause. The kid was clearly shocked and stunned. No one had ever stood up to this dwarf sociopath in his whole life. I had taken the words out of his mouth and filled it with fart. I make my move first, picking up the toy I was reaching for off the low shelf, take a few steps forward and stare at it for a few seconds. On to alligator, the only thing the kid could manage to do was burst into tears. My friend senses danger, the jig is up and his head darts for cover. The mom turns around to see her kid with an open toy, crying on the floor and me minding my own business. She walks up to him and asks what's wrong, but the kid can't speak. All he gets out is, "Bawa wawa fart bawa." It took every fiber in my body not to laugh. I put the toy back on a middle shelf, turn around, give a final nonchalant look-see and then begin to take my exit. Sensing that his assailant was getting away scot-free, he somehow managed to compose himself for a moment. He shouts, "He farted on me." I could feel him pointing at me, but I continued to act like I was just browsing. I was almost around the corner when the mom goes, "Excuse me, sir." I turn around nonplussed, who? Me? While pointing to myself. "Yes. Did you just fart on my son?" Weighing my options, I played dumb. "What? I mean, I did fart. On my son? Well, I mean, technically speaking, what is on? Why did you fart on my son?" At this point the little kid has the look of schadenfreude on his face, happy to see me in trouble. "Fuck you, I'm a man. I will fart on you if I please." I turn my attention to the little kid and stare at him, because the whole store could hear him being a little, rotten asshole to his mother, so I thought I'd come over here and treat him like one. The mom looks at me, her son and the scattered G.I. Joe/wrappers/box on the floor. The mom is puzzled as to what to do and says, just go. That's my cue. I turn around, walk away with little extra step. I look up to see the black orb of security cameras and all the stories on Reddit about unjustly having to register as a sex offender flash before my eyes. As soon as I turn the corner, I book it outside as fast as I can while dialing my friend. Like a true friend, he is right out front with the engine running and Risk in the trunk. We laugh on the car ride back about the whole scene. With a slight hint of seriousness in his tone, my friend asks me, "Do you do that a lot?" Not that much. Like once every 6 months or so." We both knew I was lying. We got to our other friend's house, played Risk until 4 in the morning while drinking scotch. Overall, I would say it was a pretty good day.